as the United States prepared for the invasion of the Philippines, scheduled for late 1944. The tiny Palau Islands had to be taken first. The well-entrenched Japanese were ready to fight to the last man. It was a bloody campaign, with heavy losses on both sides. Jasper Hood was with the Marines at Palau and faced the enemy on the battlefront. By the summer of 1944, the American strategy to regain control of the Pacific is succeeding, with victories in the Gilbert, Marshall, and Mariana Islands. The goal of this island-to-island conquest is to allow General Douglas MacArthur to liberate the Philippines. One potential Japanese stronghold remains, the Palau Islands. On a tiny island in this group is a strategically placed airfield. That base is Peleliu. Because of its location, the Japanese expect an American invasion. General Sadai Inouye is expected to assign 10,000 crack troops to hold the island. General Inouye has structured his defense plan not on the typical massive charges of past Japanese campaigns, but on a new defensive system which will cause heavy losses to the Americans.
The Japanese had really two kinds of fortifications on Peleliu. One was the natural terrain, this rugged terrain with coral ridges. The other, of course, were the caves that they developed. They used oil drums filled with concrete. They basically turned them into bunkers, which were essentially impenetrable to air attack. There were some that were like 5 stories deep. They have their own electrical generating system, sophisticated communications equipment, air conditioning. It was an engineering marvel. They're interesting in another respect. They were a rare example of cooperation between the Imperial Japanese Army and the Imperial Japanese Navy. They usually rivals, didn't work together, but on these they did. The Japanese working conditions were just terrible. Peleliu was very tropical, it rains a lot, the temperature's over 100 degrees. It's little wonder that when they finished them, named them for favorite beauty spots in Japan, to think of something other than the conditions that they were actually working in. The troops that were there, some had been in reserve units in the Guangdong Army in Manchuria, hadn't seen much fighting recently. They weren't on the front lines at all. But others were from China proper, where there had been intense fighting, and their leader was decorated 9 times for heroic leadership. So they were ready to fight. The Japanese had reason to believe that they could hold out and maybe even be invulnerable, because, first of all, they had this idea that spirit can prevail over matter. Secondly, they had the advantage of this really rugged terrain.
With more than 500 caves being prepared, General Inouye appoints Colonel Kunio Nakagawa to command the forces on Peleliu. Colonel Nakagawa deploys his unit strategically on both Peleliu and Anguar Island. Even though the Japanese commanders believe in their defensive abilities, they still give an order to fight to the last man. The Japanese are alerted that Americans are closing in on the Palau Islands.
This brought a sudden realization that they were vulnerable to American air power, and also in terms of the larger picture where the focus is really on the Philippines. Peleliu is meant to be fought in connection with the defense of the Philippines or the attack on the Philippines. The Americans could bomb Japanese forces in the southern Philippines. The whole question of whether Peleliu is really important or not is very highly debated. Some people say it was Admiral Nimitz's biggest mistake to insist on fighting to take Peleliu.
Among the 20,000 men involved in Admiral Nimitz's controversial plan called Operation Stalemate is a private first class in the 1st Marine Division, Jasper Hood.
There was some disagreement among the people when they were planning to go there. I won't say it was a 50-50, but there wasn't an overwhelming desire to have a landing at Peleliu. But somebody's opinion was honored until we made the landing.
On orders from Admiral Nimitz, the 3rd Fleet swings into action. For 10 consecutive days, carrier-based planes strike Peleliu and all supporting bases. The main objective of all this activity is the airfield in the south. Along the northern end of the island is an unbroken ridge covered by dense foliage. This high ground is the key to control of the airfield. A gunfire support group of battleships begins a bombardment that will continue for 4 days. Heavy cruisers also move in to take part in the shelling. Meanwhile, Colonel Nakagawa's troops are hidden deep in the caves, well protected from the bombardment, hunkering down for whatever the Americans can throw at them. On the day before the invasion, the fleet admiral sends a dispatch that he has run out of targets to bomb. Marine generals predict victory in 4 days.
You have to try to think positive if you can. Nobody wanted to be there. I met very few that loved to be there. Because if anybody told me, I'd call them a liar anyhow. Because now, if anybody loved that, they need to see their head shrink because they weren't thinking too good.
For the men waiting to meet their destiny at Peleliu, there's plenty of time to think about their orders. They are supposed to make it to the beach and take hold of the island. September 15, 1944, landing craft set out from ships with the first waves of Marines. Many of the men put on camouflage paint. They find it good for their morale to feel ready for battle. Then come the two most critical orders in the operation. Stand by to disembark, followed by all Marines lay to your debarkation stations. As a landing craft touches down to the water, the men inside know that some of them won't be making it back to the ship. Some Marines won't admit to the possibility of being killed, while others are resigned to the reality that their number could be up. Most of them are there to serve their country and hope for the best.